First, Moloch, horrid king besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears, though for the noise of drums and timbrels loud, their children's cries unheard, that passed through fire to his grim idol. Him the Ammonite worshipped in Rabbah and her watery plain, in Argob and in Bashan, to the stream of utmost Arnon. Not content with such audacious neighborhood, the wisest heart of Solomon he led by fraud, to build his temple right against the temple of God on that opprobrious hill, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnom, Tophet thence, and black Gehenna called, the type of hell. Next, Chamos, the obscene dread of Moab's sons, from Auror to Nebo and the wild of southmost Abarim, in Hesebon and Horonaim, Sion's realm beyond the flowery dale of Sibma clad with vines, and Aleale to the asphaltic pool. Peor his other name, when he enticed Israel and Sittim on their march from Nile to do him wanton rites, which cost them woe. Yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged, even to that hill of scandal, by the grove of Moloch homicide, lust hard by hate, till good Josiah drove them thence to hell. With these came they, who from the bordering flood of old Euphrates to the brook that parts Egypt from Syrian ground, had general names, of Baalim and Ashtaroth, those male, these feminine. For spirits, when they please, can either sex assume, or both. So soft and uncompounded is their essence pure, not tied or manacled with joint or limb, nor founded on the brittle strength of bones like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they choose, dilated or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purpose, and works of love or enmity fulfill. For those the race of Israel oft forsook their living strength, and unfrequented left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, for which their heads as low bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes. With these in troop came Ashtoreth, whom the Phoenicians call Astarte, queen of heaven with crescent horns, to whose bright image nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs. In Sion also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain, built by that uxorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolatresses, fell to idols foul. Thammuz came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate in amorous ditties all a summer's day, while smooth Adonis from his native rock ran purple to the sea, supposed with blood of Thammuz yearly wounded. The love tale infected Sion's daughters with like heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred porch Ezekiel saw, when by the vision led his eye surveyed the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next came one who mourned in earnest, when the captive ark maimed his brute image, head and hands lopped off in his own temple on the Grunsel edge where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. Dagon his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fish. Yet had his temple high reared in Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine, in Gath and Ascalon, in Acharon and Gaza's frontier bounds. Him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abana and Pharphar. Lucid streams, he also against the house of God was bold. A leper once he lost, and gained a king. Ahaz, his sottish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mode, whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After these appeared a crew who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Oris and their train, with monstrous shapes and sorceries, abused fanatic Egypt and her priest, to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. Nor did Israel 'scape the infection, when their borrowed gold composed the calf in Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the grazed ox, Jehovah, who in one night when he passed from Egypt marching, equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and all her bleating gods. Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked, yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars, when the priest turns atheist? As did Eli's sons, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with insolence and wine. Witness the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when the hospitable door exposed a matron to avoid worse rape. These were the prime in order and in might. The rest were long to tell, though far renowned. The Ionian gods, of Javan's issue held, gods yet confessed later than heaven and earth, their boasted parents. Titan, heaven's firstborn, with his enormous brood, and birthright seized by younger Saturn. He from mightier Jove his own and Rhea's sons, like measure found, so Jove usurping reigned. These first in Crete and Ida known, thence on the snowy top of cold Olympus, ruled the middle air, their highest heaven. Or on the Delphian cliff, or in Dodonia, and through all the bounds of Doric land, or who with Saturn old fled over Adria to the Hesperian fields, and o'er the Celtic roamed the utmost isles. All these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp, yet such wherein appeared obscure some glimpse of joy, to have found their chief not in despair, to have found themselves not lost in loss itself, which on his countenance cast like doubtful hue. But he his wonted pride soon recollecting, with high words that bore semblance of worth, not substance, gently raised their fainting courage and dispelled their fears. Then straight commands that at the warlike sound of trumpets loud and clarions be upreared, his mighty standard, that proud honor claimed Azazel as his right, a cherub tall, who forthwith from the glittering staff unfurled the imperial ensign, which full high advanced shone like a meteor streaming to the wind, with gems and golden luster rich emblazed, seraphic arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds, at which the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's concave and beyond, frighted the reign of chaos and old night. All in a moment through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orient colors waving. With them rose a forest huge of spears, and thronging helms appeared, and serried shields in thick array, of depth immeasurable. Anon they moved in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood, of flutes and soft recorders, such as raised to height of noblest temper heroes old arming to battle, and instead of rage, deliberate valor breathed, firm and unmoved with dread of death or flight or foul retreat. Nor wanting power to mitigate and swage with solemn touches troubled thoughts, and chase anguish and doubt and fear and sorrow and pain from mortal or immortal minds. Thus they, breathing united force with fixed thought, moved on in silence to soft pipes that charmed their painful steps o'er the burnt soil. And now advanced in view they stand, a horrid front, of dreadful length and dazzling arms, in guise of warriors old, with ordered spear and shield, awaiting what command their mighty chief had to expose. He through the armed files darts his experienced eye, and soon traverse the whole battalion views. Their order due, their visages and stature as of gods, their number last he sums. And now his heart distends with pride, and hardening in his strength glories, for never since created man met such embodied force as named with these could merit more than that small infantry warred on by cranes. Though all the giant brood of Phlegra with the heroic race were joined that fought at Thebes and Ilium, on each side mixed with auxiliar gods, and what resounds in fable or romance of Uther's sons, begirt with British and Armoric knights, and all who since, baptized or infidel, jousted in Aspermont or Montalban, Damasco or Morocco or Trebizond, or whom Bisarta sent from Afric shore when Charlemagne with all his peerage fell by Fontarabia. Thus far these beyond compare of mortal prowess, yet observe their dread commander. He above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower. His form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruin, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun, new risen, looks through the horizontal misty air, shorn of his beams, or from behind the moon, in dim eclipse, disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations, and with fear of change perplexes monarchs. Darkened so, yet shone above them all, the archangel. But his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek. But under brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride, waiting revenge, cruel his eye, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold the fellows of his crime, the followers rather, far other once beheld in bliss, condemned forever, now to have their lot in pain.